Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air. Good business and good manners. What's the connection? Find out on today's Advanced Studio Classroom. Happy New Year's to all of you listeners out there. My name is Liz Archer, and I'm so glad that you could join us for another lesson with Advanced Studio Classroom, your window on the world. The fact that you cared to make time on the first day of 2009 to listen to Advanced Radio shows your commitment and interest in improving your English. And improving English is certainly one of the most common answers I hear from people when I ask them, "What's your New Year's resolution?" Now, there are two other people here with me in the studio, and I'd like to ask them this question. First of all, to my right is Brandon. Hello, Brandon, and Happy New Year.
Hi, Liz. Happy New Year to you.
Okay, Brandon. He is one of our newest teachers. For those of you who've just recently started listening to Advanced Radio, he is one of our newest teachers who's joining Studio Classroom and working on the Advanced team. Now, Brandon, where are you from originally?
I am from the United States. I'm from the state of Tennessee, which is in the southeast part of the United States.
I appreciate you mentioning that it's in the southeast part of the U.S. Sometimes we Americans get too excited about talking about our home state that we forget that most people don't know where they're located. So, Brandon, do you have any New Year's resolutions?
I do have a couple of New Year's resolutions, Liz. I would like to read more, and I would also like to exercise, which I know that's probably a normal New Year's resolution, but
very popular one.
That would be great if I could do both of those.
Okay, reading and exercising. That's good. Good for the mind, good for the body.
That's right.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Now, over to my left is Winnie. Hi there, Winnie, and a happy 2009 to you.
Happy New Year's to you, Liz. And hello, listeners.
She is, Winnie, that is. She's also one of our newest teachers who's joined Studio Classroom. And where are you from, Winnie?
I am from New York, which is in the Northeast.
Okay, New York as in New York City?
Yes, New York City, that's right.
Nice place. And Winnie, I'm sure you have New Year's resolutions as well?
Brandon kind of stole my answer because I was going to say exercise more.
Okay.
But I will add to that, I think I want to manage my time better as well.
Ooh, time management. That's a good one, too.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Winnie. For myself, I also have a goal for 2009. I'd like to learn a new musical instrument. The problem is I haven't quite figured out which instrument, but I know I would like to learn something new, pick up something new and give it a try. And there's always something I can work on, and I think that goes for everyone. We all have something we can work on, and as the saying goes, there's always room for improvement. Now, today's article touches on this subject. That there is something that people can work on, and unfortunately, some people, they think that it's getting worse. What is it? That would be manners. Our article for today is entitled, The New Good Manners. And if you have your new 2009, brand new 2009 January issue of Advanced Magazine, please turn to page 8. Now, what does it say on the left-hand side, Brandon?
It says an increase in bad manners means good business for the etiquette experts.
Okay, interesting. Though I've heard people complain that society is getting worse and worse because people are just not so nice to each other anymore, this article does have a positive perspective regarding this problem, that this could actually bring business for etiquette experts. But first of all, what is etiquette, Winnie?
When we're talking about etiquette, we're saying that there's a set rule or practices that are acceptable or right in society. And so this could mean the way some people dress, maybe habits, different rules or right or wrong ways of doing something.
Okay. So there are actually these people out there, these experts who know all these rules of what's right and what's wrong, and it's all about being polite. Now, exactly how are things good for these etiquette experts, and what are some examples of these increasingly depressing bad manners? We will be exploring these subjects for the next 3 days. For day 1, we will be looking at an article called Poor Etiquette on the Rise. And here's the first half of today's reading. Again, we're on page 8 of your January Advanced Magazine.
The New Good Manners. Poor Etiquette on the Rise. If you've ever overheard a coworker's loud cell phone conversation or become nauseated watching one talk with a mouthful of food, you are not alone. Etiquette experts say a lack of social graces and general rudeness has become all too common in the workplace. The line between what is acceptable and unacceptable is blurring as a new generation of employees enters the workforce, bringing with it their use of personal technology, cell phones and MySpace, for example, and a more casual attitude and fashion sense. The boon in bad manners has been good for the etiquette business, whose experts are finding their talents in demand. Businesses are also discovering that polishing their employees' behavior pays off in increased productivity, better sales, and a more cooperative workplace. Maria Everding, who has taught etiquette for more than 20 years, trains and certifies at least 10 consultants a month, up from an average of 4 just 2 years ago. There is definitely job security for me, Everding said.
Thank you, Steve, for the reading. The writer Robert Rodriguez begins the article with 2 unpleasant situations. Now, what are they, Brandon?
Well, Liz, here they're talking about the situation of talking on a cell phone at work, as well as eating with your mouth full. And this sometimes can make people around these situations, around these other people, nauseated. And nauseated here means it makes you feel kind of sick. It makes you feel like maybe vomiting is a better specific definition for nauseated here.
Right. Now, obviously, watching somebody eat and talk at the same time is not going to really make you want to throw up. But it's just so sickening to see people do that we just exaggerate and say it makes you feel nauseated. Now, the adjective would be nauseating. The whole scene is nauseating. It makes you feel nauseated, okay, or become nauseated. Okay, now, so have either one of you ever encountered this kind of either one of these situations before?
Certainly, in the workplace all the time I hear cell phones ringing, and a lot of times it may be some kind of compromising rings on their phones, and that's just a very embarrassing situation.
True. And what about you, Brandon?
And also, sometimes when I see people eating and talking at the same time, it can be kind of disgusting because you're trying to work and they're eating with their mouth full and then trying to tell you something and you can't really understand what they're saying. So that can be kind of, nauseating.
Right. It's rude to let people see the contents of your mouth. And at the same time, they're having trouble trying to understand what you're saying. So either way, it's just rude. Okay. Well, experts say that this lack of social graces and general rudeness has become all too common in the workplace. Now, what does social graces mean, Winnie?
When we say social graces, we're talking about the etiquettes or the rules that are especially in a public setting or a public place. We're talking about being polite while you're around other people in particular.
Okay. Now, moving on to the next paragraph, what does the writer say, Brandon?
The writer says the line between what is acceptable and unacceptable is blurring as a new generation of employees enters the workforce, bringing with it their use of personal technology, cell phones, and MySpace, for example, and more casual attitude and fashion sense. So what the writer is saying here is that it's not so clear what is right and what is wrong. The line is blurring means the line between what is right and what is wrong is not clear.
Okay. So it's getting harder to define what is good and what is not good, or maybe I should say what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, as we have this whole new group of workers from a different generation joining the workforce. And again, what's so unique about this new group or generation of workers? Brandon?
Well, as we have already said, they talk on their cell phone, they eat with their mouth full, but we also have new technologies out there that these new people have been using for quite some time, so they think it's a normal practice just to use it at work, but other people, maybe older people, are not used to that behavior. So it's kind of unclear of what's acceptable and what's unacceptable.
Okay. Some of us, when we were kids, we can still remember a time when cell phones were not around. It's something that didn't come around till many, many years later. But now I am seeing my friends with their kids, the kids that are being born now, this generation, cell phones are such a regular part of life. So your understanding of how technology works for you is very different now if you were to compare the different generations. And we have a problem. We have a whole new wave of new workers coming in with a different attitude. And that's regarding their usage, not just about personal technology, but how they're going to use their personal technology. And they seem to prefer what is more casual, and they have a different way of dressing themselves for work. But things aren't entirely that bad, as we can see in the next paragraph. What does it say, Winnie?
Next paragraph reads, "The boon and bad manners has been good for the etiquette business, whose experts are finding their talents in demand. Businesses are also discovering that polishing their employees' behavior pays off in increased productivity, better sales, and a more cooperative workplace." And so the first line, "the boon and bad manners has been good," is suggesting that boon or benefit to bad manners is that there is now this rise of an etiquette business or people who teach about having good manners, and that business is on the rise.
Okay, so it's all good news for those in the etiquette business.
Yes.
These experts are now being hired to help deal with this social problem of bad manners. Again, now who's asking for help? Who's asking for this kind of service?
Yeah, Liz, the businesses are asking for the service because they see these people, their employees, working, and they see all of these bad manners, so they need some help. So they go to these etiquette experts to ask for help.
Okay. Employers are finding out that if their workers have good manners, this could help them to work more effectively, and that leads to better business and a better working place. Now, in the following paragraph, we have a comment from Maria Everding. Who is she and what is her background, Winnie?
Maria is one of the etiquette experts who teaches, trains, and certifies these consultants for many years. And she says that at least 10 consultants a month recently, and this is an increase from 4 consultants just 2 years ago, meaning, in other words, that there is a much drastic increase in this need for etiquette experts.
I like how you use the word drastic. It means really big of a difference. So Maria Everding is an etiquette expert. We've been talking about etiquette experts so far, and she's one of them. And she has certainly helped a lot of people recently with their manners. And in recent years, the average number of people she'd help has greatly increased, drastic as Winnie was saying. And what does she have to say about this phenomenon, Brandon?
Well, she says that there is definitely job security for me. And that means that because so many people need help, that she doesn't have to worry about having a job or not, because she knows that she's going to be able to go out and offer her services to people because there is such a need for her services.
Okay. That actually, I find that somewhat bizarre, a little strange, because she is not afraid of losing her job because she knows that there will always be somebody that she could help, to encourage, to be mindful of their manners so that they can do things better in their work. But then that would mean that there will always be rude people, right? That there will always be somebody out there who is just not getting it, who's just unfortunately offending everybody left and right. And it's, in a way, her livelihood depends on the existence of this situation of bad manners. So, well, as far as the etiquette expert is concerned, all this display of bad manners in the workplace is a good thing for them. And let's find out more in the second half of today's lesson. We're on page 9, a welcome trend. Please follow along.
A welcome trend. The push for a more civil and refined workplace is also taking hold in California's San Joaquin Valley, where several companies provide business etiquette training. Often, they're hired to provide one-on-one coaching as well as to help companies become more professional. Advice is given on everything from table manners to how to dress appropriately. The trend doesn't surprise business management professor Julie Olson Buchanan, who says companies want to reestablish the ground rules for how employees and managers conduct themselves at work, especially with the use of technology. 20 years ago, most people would have frowned at someone carrying on a loud personal conversation while in line at the grocery store. But cell phone conversations go on all the time now, including at work. There has been a slow erosion of what is okay and what is not okay, Olson Buchanan said.
If you've just tuned in, you're listening to Advanced Radio. My name is Liz Archer, and I'm here in the studio with Brandon and Winnie. We've been discussing our first article for 2009 entitled The New Good Manners, and it's a society article. Speaking of society, now we're looking at the section of today's article where we talk about a welcomed trend, or something that you see that's growing and becoming more and more popular. And what is this trend, Winnie?
The trend recently is for etiquette experts or people who teach about good manners to come to workplaces and teach other people on how to become more civil or refined. And in this section, it reads, "The push for a more civil and refined workplace is also taking hold in San Joaquin Valley, where several companies provide business etiquette training."
Okay, now, civil and refined workplace. What does that mean?
When we say civil and refined, we're talking about a workplace or something that is orderly and polite.
Okay, you want a work environment where you feel that people are very polite and things are done in such an orderly way, in a way that you feel very comfortable. Now, San Joaquin Valley, it's located in Central California. And if you'll notice on page 8, Robert Rodriguez, he's writing for the Fresno Bee, which is the newspaper in the Fresno, California area. Fresno is located in San Joaquin Valley, and now we have several companies there providing training to people or companies that would like to improve their manners. So what are some of these services or training like, Brandon?
Well, these services, as we see in the next end of the paragraph, says often they're hired to provide one-on-one coaching as well to help companies become more professional. So again, they're helping the companies to become more professional, the people rather in the companies to become more professional. And it's a one-on-one type of training, which is more beneficial to the employees.
So when something's like one-on-one, that means you have one teacher or trainer to one student or trainee.
Right.
So you have direct feedback.
That's right.
And very beneficial, but also very expensive too.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay, and what else can we find with these services, Winnie?
Well, these experts give advice on everything from table manners, meaning when you're dining with or eating with customers or even coworkers, how do you eat properly? How do you use your table settings? And also, how do you dress appropriately? What is the style or what is appropriate clothing to wear to work?
Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to table manners, it's amazing. You would think that people would have learned them at home, you know.
Oh, that's often not true, though, I guess.
Apparently not.
Yes.
But I'm reminded, for those of you who can still remember that movie Titanic, there's that one scene where one of the characters was able to join a really fancy dinner. And upon sitting down, he finds that it's not just one fork, one knife, one spoon, but several knives, several forks, several spoons. And where do you begin?
Yes.
And then not only that, but you have several drinking glasses too. What is for what? That could be a little overwhelming. Now, obviously, in our everyday life, we don't have that kind of table setting. But there are other things to think about. For example, where does the bread, the bread and the butter, where should they be placed? And are you serving alcohol or not? Things like that. So these are things that people would appreciate having a little help or tips on, being more polite and so that they don't offend. And the same thing goes for your dress. How do you dress for a certain work environment? Would you wear the same thing, say, if you have guests coming in? Or would you wear the same thing if you're having a company dinner? Things like that.
Right.
So there's a wide variety of services that these etiquette experts can provide, and it's becoming popular to hire these experts to help refine things in the workplace. Moving on to the next paragraph, we see that this trend doesn't surprise Julie Olson Buchanan. And who is she, Brandon?
Julie Olson Buchanan is simply a business management professor who says companies want to reestablish the ground rules for how employees and managers conduct themselves at work, especially with the use of technology.
Okay, so now we have Professor Olsen Buchanan here, and she says that companies want to reestablish ground rules. Now, what are ground rules?
Ground rules are the basic rules that everyone should abide by. And going back to what we were saying earlier about the line blurring, I think Professor Buchanan is saying here that we need to have one set of rules where everybody knows what the bottom line is.
Mm-hmm. So we need to be able to communicate and let everybody understand that these are the basic rules. And if we all abide or follow these basic rules, we should be able to get along just fine.
Yes.
Okay. So companies want to redefine these basic rules or principles regarding their workers' behavior and actions around the workplace, especially when it comes to the use of technology. And then we have an example in the next paragraph, Brandon.
Right. In the next paragraph, we see that it reads, 20 years ago, most people would have frowned at someone carrying on a loud personal conversation while in line at the grocery store. So a long time ago, many years ago, that wasn't common. But now, so many people have cell phones that it happens all the time.
Right. That's right. Once upon a time, 20 years ago, people believed that any public conversations would have to be done in such a way that, you don't bother the people around you. Maybe the conversations are private, and the fact is, they're none of, the other people's business, and we want to respect people's privacy. But more importantly, the people around you, they have the right not to hear, They don't want to hear about the business of others, It's not my business. It's none of my affair. So why should I have to hear about your complaints? Why do I want to hear about all the dirty details about what just happened in your life? It's just not polite to eavesdrop or hear what other people's conversations are all about. But now things are different, right?
Yes, I think with the increase in cell phone use, you find people talking on their cell phones everywhere they go, whether it's the grocery stores, when they're commuting on a train, on the bus. It seems like there's someone using a cell phone anywhere and everywhere all the time.
Right. And sometimes the funny thing is, even though you can't hear what the other person is saying on the other end of the phone, just listening to that one person with all that they have to say, you can pretty much figure out what the whole thing's about.
That's right.
Unfortunately, Now, earlier we were talking about 20 years ago, you might have a conversation going on in private,
Right.
People step to the side, there are two people talking, and you try not to hear what they're saying. But now you have these one-sided conversations, and you can actually hear the whole thing or figure out the whole thing. Well, I'm sure this is something we're all very familiar with. It's to the point where if somebody said let's say ringtone, okay, you have a unique ringtone to their phone, and this phone starts to ring at work because someone is calling in, and those of us who are sitting around that phone, maybe we don't see the phone, but we immediately know, whose phone is ringing. Why? Because we've heard that ringtone, so many times, we just know, it's that tune at so-and-so's phone. Well, I think that there seems to be this understanding in some circles that as long as the phone does not, number one, ring during an official meeting, like you're in a board meeting, for example, as long as it's not ringing in the meeting, and or number two, if it doesn't ring too long, maybe ring once, twice, and you quickly answer the phone, and then you quickly step away, then that should be okay. I seem to gather that seems to be a common understanding, It's okay to have the phone ring as long as, you don't interrupt anything or disturb anybody too long, right? But 20 years ago, there were no cell phones around, But people who worked, back in those days, and they're still working nowadays, they've had to learn to adjust, and some don't like it. Some find it rather offensive or rude. So in regards to such a change in perception, what does Olsen Buchanan have to say?
She says there's been a slow erosion of what is okay and what is not okay. And erosion here means that something is fading away or kind of going away, piece by piece, slowly going away.
Okay, well, what do you think? Do you agree with Olsen Buchanan here?
I agree with her because things change always. Things are always changing, and even in this under this topic of etiquette, things are changing with technology. things become acceptable now that weren't acceptable 20 years ago.
Okay. Now, the word eroding, though, I can't help but feel it's somewhat negative. Like there's a certain grief, that you feel sad because it's not just changing, but you wish it wouldn't change. I don't know. That's my interpretation of this word eroding. What do you think?
I agree. I think whenever there's something new that comes in the scene, there is this sense of loss when you let go of things that you're comfortable with or things that you're used to. Mm-hmm. And so in this case, maybe some of the workers from the older generation, they would feel a sense of loss or erosion when these rules are not the same rules anymore.
Right. Certain sense of loss. Because she could have said, there has been a slow transformation of what is okay and what is not okay. Right. Now, if she had said it that way, transformation, then it would seem like she's very, positive. She's excited about what things may look like in the near future. But the erosion would be what was once there is no longer there. Right. Although she did tack on the word slow. So it's not too drastic, as we would say, using that word. And what about you, listeners? What do you think? Do you agree with Olsen Buchanan that there has been a slow erosion of what is okay and what is not okay? Do you agree with her at all? Do you think that this is really what we would call a slow erosion, or do you think it's a transformation? Is it a good thing or a bad thing that we have this change? Well, there's more to this issue that's yet to be discussed. We have the second part to this article to go over tomorrow. And we really do hope you'll join us again for this fascinating topic of good manners. Well, until then, this is Liz.
And I'm Brandon.
And
I'm Winnie.
We're wishing you all a happy new year and goodbye.
Goodbye. Bye.